The 49ers are the unluckiest team in football, and I don't mean unlucky in the way that the Bills are, where they seemingly get screwed over and lose even if they're winning with 13 seconds left. I mean, they're unlucky in the sense that they're cursed. You see, since 2013, San Francisco has finished inside the top 10 most injured teams in football, 12 out of 13 possible seasons, spanning over 4 different general managers, 3 different quarterbacks, and 2 head coaching regimes. It doesn't matter who's there, they always find a way to wind up injured. And last season, their roster totaled 254 games lost to injury, 4th worst in the league. Now look, I know what most of you are going to say is the cause of this because I thought the same thing. You say injuries are just caused by bad luck because football is a violent game and guys get hurt. And you're not wrong. Injuries are kind of the most boring and easy to point to explanation in sports for why a team didn't pan out, because major injuries are so impactful and sadly they're pretty common across the league. Luckily for most individual teams, catastrophic injuries to stars don't happen every year, but with the 49ers, it's almost a guarantee to happen. And this isn't just hypothetical, it ain't a myth, it ain't something we're just imagining in our heads like we have to imagine Herbert finally winning a playoff game. The Niners lost darn near every single star they had last year, and yet they still won 12 games and beat the defending champion Eagles on the road in January. I know it was only a 4-point win, but let's face it, they kicked the Eagles' ass thoroughly in that game. The 49ers are always injured, and yet they're almost always a great team. They survive it because one man built something so powerful that is almost resistant to the roster around him. Let's just look at what Kyle Shanahan had to juggle last year. Week 1, George Kittle pulls his hamstring against Seattle and misses time. In Week 4, Ricky Pearsall popped his PCL. Brock Purdy spent a good chunk of the year fighting turf toe, where it sounds like nothing, but it feels like you're playing on a broken foot. Brandon Ayuk got Thanos snapped and then started doing his best prime Henry Ruggs III impression. Juwan Jennings went through a stretch where he had like 5 broken ribs and a high ankle sprain at the same time. And on top of that, the defense was also a shell of itself. Nick Bosa tore his ACL, and Fred Warner completely snapped his ankle against Tampa. That pass rush got so thin that San Francisco finished the year with only 20 sacks, the fewest in the league. Just Myles Garrett himself had more sacks than the entire 49ers team did last year. And despite that, the 49ers were still 12-5 headed into the playoffs. Sadly for them, George Kittle came back for the wildcard round and tore his Achilles. So literally every single step of the way has been catastrophe for them from an injury standpoint. Just brutal. But I swear they've tried to fix it, man. They have. You might have caught that substation thing back in January, especially if you're on Twitter or X or whatever they call it. Basically, there's a Silicon Valley power electrical substation sitting about 200 yards from Levi Stadium, right beside the 49ers practice field, and it got expanded in 2014 when the stadium opened. A few days after they lost to Seattle in Week 18, a guy named Peter Cohen walked up to that fence with a meter, took his readings, and posted a thread arguing that low-frequency electromagnetic fields were degrading the collagen in these players' tendons and ligaments. And he called that place the NFL's soft tissue graveyard. It went nuclear, and every single Niners fan I know suddenly had a physics degree. Kendrick Bourne even brought it up on camera right after George Kittle tore his Achilles in the wildcard game.
Yes, that power plant.
Some players even reportedly started telling their agents that they didn't want to sign in San Francisco because of this. So the team looked into it because at that point, why wouldn't you? They hired an independent scientist with 45 years in electromagnetic fields, ran lab-grade equipment on the site, and the readings came back 400 times below the threshold for unsafe work. So pretty much a nothing burger. But that's not the only thing they tried. They also poured $9 million into rebuilding the rehab and recovery facilities and hired 3 more physical therapists after players graded their training room a C- on the NFLPA report cards. They even changed out the grass at Levi's and changed the irrigation system too, and none of that worked. Which brings me to the thing that I just can't get out of my head. If a franchise eats 13 years of being this injury prone, why aren't they just total garbage? Because we know what this normally does to a football team. If a team loses significant starters to injury for even 1 year, they fall off. I mean, just look at Arizona last year, who were the most injured roster in football in 2025, with 32 players hurt and over 303 games missed. Kyler Murray alone missed 12 of them. They finished 3-14 and they lost their final 9 games straight, resulting in Jonathan Gannon getting whacked.
Shots. Explosives.
That's what a typical season is supposed to look like for a team in the top 5 of injuries. It's supposed to result in a coaching carousel, QB carousel, and picking high in the draft every single year. Yet San Francisco went 12-5 and had a shot at the #1 seed in Week 18. People forget that. They took the 6th seed instead, walked into Philadelphia, and beat the brakes off the Super Bowl champions without Bosa, without Warner, and partway through the game without Kittle. Their defense finished 13th in points allowed and 24th in takeaways, dead last in sacks, and yet they won a playoff game on the road. So how did they do it? It all comes down to Kyle Shanahan. Look, before I glaze here, I know some of you are gonna say, bro, he's always had a stacked roster for a decade. Nah, look, Trent Williams, great. George Kittle, amazing. Christian McCaffrey, a GOAT. But that's sort of where it ends. He's had 3 years of quarterbacking from a 7th round rookie. He's been to 2 Super Bowls and held a lead in both of them, had a 10-point lead in the 4th of one and lost in overtime in the other. He can take a collection of mid to good players and make them elite. I mean, just look what he did with Christian McCaffrey last year, a 29-year-old running back who only played 4 games the previous year. This year, he had 413 touches, more than any player in football, and totaled up over 2,000 yards from scrimmage, winning Comeback Player of the Year. And a lot of that was in the passing game, not the running game. Credit to CMC for being a beast, but who's actually scheming him open? An even better example of that is Jake Tonjes. He actually went undrafted out of Cal and played 4 years in the NFL, 20 career games, but he had 0 catches. But when George Kittle went down in the opener, Tonjes came in and won the game on a jump ball in the end zone. He finished the year with 34 receptions, 293 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Niners quarterbacks had over a 126 passer rating throwing his way, which is just insane. He went from a literal nobody to somebody getting an $8 million contract in the snap of a finger, all because of Kyle Shanahan. But Tonjes isn't even close to the best example of Kyle's brilliance. As I said, Brock Purdy missed 8 games with turf toe, so we got to see the Mac Jones experience happen in 49ers jerseys. Let's not forget, New England gave up on the guy. Jacksonville had no use for him. By the time he got to San Fran, he was basically just a first-round bust that got carried by Alabama. And yet, he started 8 games for the 49ers and went 5-3. Completing nearly 70% of his passes with over 2,100 yards and 13 touchdowns. And it's not a fluke because Kyle also had Jimmy OnlyFans Garoppolo going toe-to-toe with Mahomes in a Super Bowl. The stuff he pulls off is just mind-boggling. But here's the truth about Shanahan. He's not a motivator, and in fact, hell, I bet he rubs people the wrong way a lot of the time with his demeanor. But his offense gives the team a floor that no other team can sniff, not even Andy Reid or Sean McVay. His schemes are engineered so eloquently that a tight end running that drag route arrives on the same specific patch of grass at one specific moment off the same motion behind the same run action against a defense that's already been forced to declare whether it's going to be a run or a pass before the ball has even been snapped. He creates a system that's truly plug and play. And I mean, Kyle has alluded to it many times that he doesn't actually care about drafting O-linemen high because he believes average players can be schemed up to dominate. And that especially applies in the running game where he thrives the most. And then in the passing game, when someone like George Kittle goes down, the route doesn't change, the timing doesn't change, and the quarterback's reads don't change. The only thing that changes is the name on the jersey and the number. The defense still can't cover it because they were never going to in the first place. That's why a guy with 0 career catches can catch 5 touchdowns and make it look routine on tape. And it's why a quarterback who threw more interceptions than touchdowns in New England can put up the best numbers of his life we've ever seen. How Kyle didn't win Coach of the Year this year is unfathomable. He did more with less than any coach ever has. Over a decade, in the most injured building in football, Kyle Shanahan built the one system on earth that doesn't care who's healthy. Well, that is except for one very, very important person. On July 14th, while driving down the road from a chiropractor appointment, Kyle dropped his phone between the seats, like we all do. He went down to pick it up and took his eyes off the road for 2 seconds. He slammed into a Mercedes head on. It shattered his nose, broke 3 ribs, and demolished his left hand. He had to get 40 stitches above his right eye, which he was inches away from just straight up losing outright. And he's even listed on the concussion protocol. The state crash database initially blamed the 21-year-old woman in the other car, but Shanahan called reporters into his office to specifically say, "No, I hit her," and got the record corrected. But what this means is that if Kyle himself is injured long-term in any meaningful way, this entire ship is gonna sail fast. He's so messed up that he can't even run practice right now. I know there's still plenty of time before the season, but this is arguably the most important time of the year when it comes to prep work. It's where all the stuff that teams run during the season gets ironed out and refined. And the 49ers are going to need him this year desperately.
I head to San Francisco, latest news, bro. Ricky Pearsall done for the year, season-ending PCL injury.
I just don't know what to say about the Niners. They are, all the injury, it's just ridiculous.
Just 6 days into camp, Ricky Pearsall's knee flared up and he's out for the entire season, needing surgery. We still have no clue what Warner and Bosa are going to look like on the defensive end, and nobody knows when George Kittle is going to be back. Brandon Ayuk doesn't even exist anymore, and it seems like the injury bug is biting early yet again, while last year's injury bug still hasn't even finished running its course. So here's where I landed on Kyle Shanahan. Kyle isn't hiding some information about his car crash from you and I, and he's not hiding an injury crisis from you and I by underreporting injuries. He's hiding the damage that those injuries would be doing to his team if he was anybody else. Every other team in the league would have been bottom dwellers with some of the injuries that his teams have faced. Yet he's dragging Jimmy Garoppolo to a Super Bowl and winning 12 games without his best players for most of the year. This type of stuff isn't normal, and we truly don't talk about it enough. I'm a Cowboys fan, so I personally hate the guy, but I hate him in a way that you'll understand. He's so damn good at his job, and his teams are always so much better than the Cowboys that it pains me. But in reality, he's dominated us thoroughly end to end in the playoffs since Dak has been here. It never mattered who his quarterback was, who his running back was, or who his D coordinator was, he always stomped us out every single time. And sadly, we play them again this year. And suddenly I'm in a bad mood, and I know you are too, so go ahead and watch this video about me explaining who needs a reality check for this upcoming season to cheer yourself up.